All right, this is going to be a film study look at Darnell Washington, how he's played through 3 preseason games with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's one of 3 tight ends that the Steelers have kept on their roster, along with Pat Fryermuth, who's, of course, the main playmaker there at that position. Connor Hayward, quite versatile. And then Washington, we all know about him from the draft process, 6'7", 265, probably pushing 270 or 275 in reality. He got in a lot of snaps during the preseason. I don't pretend that this video I'm going to show you is going to show a lot of catches by him in the preseason. He only has 2 for 15 yards. But one thing I'll say about the Steelers offense, and by the way, for this film study and any film study I do for the Steelers before week 1, it'll be based off of the 5 possessions where Kenny Pickett has been on the field. That's the only, to be honest with you, possessions that I have recorded and cataloged and organized for a larger film study leading up to the Ravens-Steelers game early in the season, but really before week 1, most likely. And so when I say that I'm focusing on Darnell Washington, I'm really only hyper-focusing that on the 5 possessions where Kenny Pickett has been on the field. He's clearly physically imposing. He's had some dominant possessions, dominant reps as a blocker at times. And look, to be honest with you, he's also had some times where he's a little top heavy, almost like leaning forward too much into the defender, and the defender's able to slide off of him and not necessarily make the tackle, but you can see there's some times where he's not using his hands that much and he's leaned too far forward. Like I said, there's not much in the way of catches here. In fact, I'm not going to show you any catches, but if you're a Steelers fan and you're listening, first of all, thank you. If you're not a Steelers fan, you've probably already seen the footage from him at Georgia and some of the training camp footage that the Steelers smartly released of him making plays against some of their defensive guys. Let's get to the film. And the way it's going to be organized is the first set is going to be run blocks. I'll try to spot shadow him before each play. It's a touchdown run by Jaylen Warren. Great effort by Warren. Also a nice job by Washington. They run a lot of this split zone concept with 2 tight ends, meaning there's 2 tight ends next to each other. And Fryermuth is going to go down the line of scrimmage. He's going to work down the line, presumably to kick a defensive end or outside linebacker. And then Washington is a part of the zone scheme. Everybody, pretty much stepping in that direction. So they're running zone right. Washington is big enough, strong enough, and physical enough to take on these edge defenders as a tight end. I think there's some times where he dips his head a little bit. He ends up a little top heavy. It doesn't seem to hurt him here. Again, great effort by Jaylen Warren. But you will see a couple of reps in this cut up where he kind of leans forward and kind of misses. So this is the same game against the Falcons. He's with Fryermuth, but now he's the outside tight end. There's actually a receiver off screen. I'll give you all 22 of this one in a moment. Look, Jaylen Warren's had a great preseason, for real. He's just been shredding it. I think the Steelers offense is a real problem for people to deal with. Another example, if you ask me, of him, kind of dipping and looking down and making himself, he's 6'7", making himself, 6'1" or 6'2". I think there's other reps where he doesn't do this. It ended up working out in his favor. The strong safety 34 goes to the outside, so it didn't hurt the context of the play at all because Warren's able to cut it up inside of Washington's block. Same play, all 22 angle. Down here at the bottom, like I said, there's a receiver outside of him. Look, the personnel they're going to be able to put on the field is pretty ridiculous. The Steelers front office has done a great job, if you ask me, of collecting talent and giving Kenny Pickett options. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Fryermuth is a playmaker, like I said earlier. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Washington brings a physical element to it. I think he'll be able to do some things in the pass game. There's not much film of it existing so far. He's only played 3 games, but I know he did get a lot of snaps in at least one of the games. And feel free in the comment section to talk about his blocks and how I assess them in a general sense at the beginning of the video. This is clearly a great example. 98, this outside linebacker or edge player, is going to stem down, and Washington just takes him down. Another great run by Jaylen Warren, just making people miss. 98 stems down. These guys are all stepping this way. Great discipline by Washington, if you ask me, because as soon as 98 engages him, he just takes him down, meaning the run concept is meant to go here. So when you say take them down, you're talking about down towards the inside of where the ball lined up, towards the midline. So to Washington's right or left on the screen. That's what I mean by taking someone down. It wasn't a down block because 98 didn't line up on the inside of him. It was actually a little bit more impressive than that. 98's trying to stem, and presumably Tampa Bay is trying to bring someone off the edge. In this case, it's a DB. And you can see this wide receiver trying to pick him up. Warren ends up basically just making a miss, turning it into like 11-yard gain. Jet sweep stuff we know is going to be a big part of their offense when they've got, compressed formation to one side. And Washington, to me, is a guy who's going to be able to help in this regard. And in the red zone, he's definitely going to be a weapon. I mean, we've seen some of the videos of him in training camp drills, one-on-ones. And he'll be a guy that you get down in the red zone you can use in play action and stuff like that. Now you can see the opposite of what I talked about earlier in terms of him being 6'7", but making himself 6'1". Now he's kind of standing straight up. And you can see the effect of what happens is he ends up being driven back a little bit. Calvin Austin, who's healthy this year, ends up having to bow it back slightly. Still ends up being like a 7 or 8 yard gain, so it's a positive play. That jet sweep stuff that Matt Canada runs gave the Ravens problems last year. I did a video on. I've done multiple videos on the jet sweep stuff. If you're interested, I'll try to link it up in the description or up top here and to the right, and you feel free to check it out. Down here, I think you got a play action. He's in the trip, so it's 11 personnel. I didn't see him on the field a whole lot in 11 personnel. It's not play action. I'm sorry, it's mesh. And then these guys are just sitting in the middle of the field. So, mesh, you're usually getting, 2 shallow drags. These guys actually sit down, and Washington sits his route down in the middle of the field. You'd have to think he's going to be an option on some of these plays, particularly in the red zone where you can kind of throw the ball up if he's able to elevate at all, which it looks like he is based on the training camp footage. Haven't seen any examples of that in game. I think I've got these plays in the wrong order. This is the jet sweep. So this one matches from 2 plays ago where he's engaging the edge defender and ends up a little bit straight up and down because of his arms being on the outside. He'll kind of right arm, left arm kind of bear hug the guy. It's not really a bear hug, but he's kind of hugging the guy a little bit with his hands on the outside. And the defender's got his hands on the inside, so consequently he gets stood up. Nice job by 81. I think that's Gentry, who did not make the 53-man roster. Punching to the inside. Very savvy play by 81 to help Washington out. Keep that edge defender to the inside. Allow Austin to get to the outside. Inside linebacker is still there to be involved with it. All right, now I think we get him on some pass concepts. This is a mesh play where he's basically going to try to pick or screen the defender from the other side, the slot defender. It ends up being a completion up to the top side of the screen, but we're focusing on Washington here. Watch how he hedges inside here. He recognizes this guy's going to go underneath. And so Washington's going to veer down back towards the 15-yard line, basically, to try to get in that defender's way. Just a super savvy play. He doesn't end up being targeted, but that's the type of thing that can help a teammate get open a little bit more. He was already going to be open, but this could possibly make him even more open. And then if the ball is delivered to him, get up the sideline and get more yards after the catch. So it might be one of the things the coaches really like about him, besides the fact that he's huge, he plays with a great motor, tries to finish plays and very strong, is that he seems to be a guy, at least from what I'm seeing, that's pretty aware, whether it's a run play or a pass play. He's aware of how he can impact the play even when he's not targeted. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Great throw by Kenny Pickett. I mean, if you watch the Kenny Pickett video I did from like a week and a half ago, you know that I think he's playing at an incredibly high level. All right, this is the play action boot concept that I thought I had 2 or 3 plays ago. So he's going to step down to run block, and then you're getting the Z running out into the flats over here. Another probably a little bit further over concept from the opposite side receiver. Washington has blocked, and then he's going to turn and just kind of sit down, be a late release valve for the quarterback if nobody covers him. Flood concept, I would call it. Kenny Pickett's being real patient, ends up holding it, and then getting the ball to, I think, Deontay Johnson for the completion. Let you watch it one more time. Again, here is Washington. I think the Steelers had a really great draft. As a Ravens fan, it ain't fun to admit that, but the reality is, they put together a great draft. Broderick Jones, Nick Herbig, I did a video on him a week ago that I think, maybe you've watched already. If not, feel free to check it out. A film study of him in the preseason. Then the Darnell Washington pick, I think, was great. Calvin Austin wasn't drafted this year, but he sat out all last year. So essentially, you're talking about this is his rookie year. They've really upgraded the roster, if you ask me, between last year's draft and this year's draft. I would say this year's draft, was a underrated draft across the NFL. Most people weren't talking about the Steelers for whatever reason in terms of after the draft, but they probably should have been, because I think it was pretty obvious that Darnell Washington, Nick Herbig, Broderick Jones, all those guys really upgraded the talent level at some key positions. I know that Gentry was an underrated player for them in terms of a tight end because he was a good blocker, but Washington to me brings other elements that Gentry doesn't seem to have. You got a really good tight end group there with Freiermuth, Washington, and Connor Hayward. You guys let me know what you think of the video. If you're a Steelers fan, appreciate you checking out the video, first of all. What you think of Darnell Washington's play, and if you think that my film study that I've presented here provides a clear picture of how he played, because certainly I'm not going to show 40 plays in a film study video. I did originally have like 38 plays saved up and then tried to whittle it down to the 8 or 9 plays that I thought was representative of how he's performed so far in the preseason. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other NFL fans or other Steelers fans would appreciate this video and enjoy it, please consider sharing a link to this content on social media to help this video get more reach.